Thank you for the fantastic introduction. Spot on. And thanks to all of you for being here and spending a night. Just for my understanding, how many of you are involved in startups currently? Okay, that's pretty close to all of you. So just also an introduction question. Why are you here tonight? Anyone can tip in? Yeah. Networking. Okay, so what I'm saying, you know. Fine. Anyone else?
Knowledge about branding.
Yeah. Knowledge about branding. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. But I guess you were also attending Kiki's lesson early on, so you should know everything by now. Anyway, taking it from the more theoretical aspect, I wanted to share my story on startups in general, but also obviously with a focus on brand building. I was the co-founder of Autobottler. That's close to 9 years ago. It was quite the journey. 2 years ago I stepped out, we sold it to PSA, grew it from a good idea to eventually becoming the most successful workshop portal across 5 countries. So even though it was super tough, it turned out to be quite well. But the purpose or the whole conclusion on Autobottler was actually, I think it's down to 2 things. It's down to our ability to actually tell a fantastic story, call it brand building or building the brand, and our ability to execute on all the details. So for me, brand building is, you know, it's actually very much a meta word. It's about dreaming. And then the only way you can actually pursue a dream is you're fantastically good at all the details. So having that, you know, understanding of details and dreams, branding and operational excellence is actually quite relevant or crucial in building a startup from my point of view. Okay, leading me back to this guy, super strange. Why is he so happy? I guess it's a way for me to illustrate that, you know, everyone starting a company goes into the process with this kind of enthusiasm. Otherwise, you shouldn't start. So everybody is super happy about their idea. They think they can really change the world. And this is going to happen because I just feel it. But the truth of the matter is, as you probably know, that almost 90% of all these good ideas and all this enthusiasm actually goes something like this. So you launch, you spend quite some time on actually launching, making that product just exactly as you feel it, and then nothing happens. And this, every startup can relate to this. So that's why most of them, and also Autobottler, the same story. You know, there's nothing like building an overnight success. Yes, obviously it takes 10 years. But the thing is, this happens all the time. So the point of brand building, from my point of view, is that you should use your brand to actually get out of this fantastically critical situation where nothing is happening. And the brand will be a vital part in many cases to actually succeed in creating that traction that is essential to anyone building a company. Because otherwise you'll just end up in a situation where you will crash and burn. But leading me back to what I think is very simply put, a formula for creating a good startup. Other things being equal, of course. I think it consists of 3 things. One thing is obviously the product. And I put in these wheels, and also the size of them actually illustrates how important I think it is. So one thing is the product. Obviously you need to have a fantastic product. Eventually you cannot, you know, outcompete any competitors or have a reason for being if you don't have a fantastic product. That's a given. But anyone can build a fantastic product, at least as a starting point. But you also need to wrap it in a really, really great story. I think it's so important, and I think so many companies are not good enough actually understanding the importance of creating that fantastic story that resonates with everyone you're talking to. But unfortunately, that story and that product doesn't work unless, question?
Know how to tell it.
Know how to tell it, but that's part of having the great story, or obviously also being good at telling it. But what's the last thing, most important thing to actually make your great story resonate with the fantastic product? Money. Can you? Okay, that's quite surprising to me that nobody. Insights. Sell it. Execution. Yeah.
Timing.
Say it again.
Timing.
Timing. No, but the thing is, timing is obviously also related to the market. You cannot tell a fantastic story if the timing is not right. You cannot build a product or brand or anything if the timing is not right in the market. Again, reflecting on Autobottler, we only succeeded because our timing was right. And the story we were telling was fantastic timing-wise in the market. So we could tell stories about saving money, how the industry was going digital, and the timing was just fantastic related to that story and to that product. And one step back, I'm actually not that good at anything other than telling stories. I'm not a developer, unfortunately. I'm not a really good, there are plenty of things that I'm not good at. But I think I have a fairly good understanding of telling the good story. I'm from CBS. I wrote my master thesis on brand building. I used to work at Kunde & Company, also a consultancy, actually selling brands, selling the processes of brands, just like DesignIt to some extent. And that's actually why I also eventually came up with the idea of Autobottler, because I thought we could build a fantastic brand, tell the right story, and the timing would be right in actually doing so. A few, a step back on what is the difference between marketing and branding and PR. So this to me is old school, right? This is the way we used to do marketing. So big companies would go out there and tell, how fantastic they are, and we have the fantastic product and you should buy it for sure, buy, make mass communication, TV commercials, etc. And people would believe in it back then. But times have fortunately changed. PR is much stronger than traditional marketing. And again, Autobottler is an example of that. So PR is obviously making other people tell that this is a good product. But the very difficult thing is translating that into branding. And branding is this: that somebody is actually approaching you asking for your product. That difference, that understanding is quite important in my opinion. And as I said, marketing is old school in the traditional sense that you're just pushing out your message and keep on saying it and using various distribution channels. Public relations is stronger because other people's actually telling your story, and eventually if you're able to build that brand, you will have people approach you as opposed to you approaching them. Two key takeaways that I have on this topic is obviously tell the right story, that goes without saying, but the other one is focus on the core performance drivers. I'll start with the last one, because focusing on the core performance drivers, as I said initially, is the difference between focusing on the details and the dreams. So these are the details, and obviously you need to have the details right, because it goes without saying, it's a rational thing. Everyone can do it. And there are a lot of details you should take into account in building a startup. This is just a digital startup, it could be anyone. Tons of details. And obviously you need to focus on the ones, but only the ones that actually create value for you. This is different from any startup, what's important. But be really, really structured around figuring out which channels that actually drives that growth and deep dive into them so that you're only focusing on the right ones. You cannot do all at all given times, but you should obviously try, measure, learn, adjust all the time. I think everybody gets that. But this is more fluffy on creating the right story and building the right brand. But why is it so important? I think it's important for many reasons. I've listed what I think are the four most important ones up here. Obviously, if you're able to tell the right story, it creates a perception that what you're saying is right, and that goes for anyone you're talking to. So the more you keep on telling them, the more you keep on convincing people that this is actually going to happen, this is a train that's moving, it's moving fast, the more people obviously believe in it, start to tell the story themselves, etc., etc., etc. Investors is a fantastic example. They will believe in your story and your brand only if you're really, really strong at telling that story again and again and again. Externally and internally, obviously it means the world. Kiki had tons of examples of the importance of actually communicating and being perceived in the right way. And then there's an element of culture and getting the right people on board. And I guess it's apparent to anyone that you cannot build a fantastic startup unless you have the fantastic people that make the difference. So attracting the right people is also such an important part of building a brand in a startup that you can never underestimate the power of actually having a strong brand. And then there's obviously the marketing efficiency. Because marketing, I've been responsible for marketing throughout the entire journey of Autobottle and also in my new venture Boon, is only working really, really well if you create sort of an organic growth. I haven't seen many successful startup owners succeeding on paid media or Google AdWords and stuff like that because you're not building brand on those channels. You're not creating that marketing efficiency that obviously you need to do if you are a consumer-oriented brand. So it has spillover effects that are hard to measure, but you have to have the trust and the gut in believing that this is going to happen if you do it right. And I have numbers that can actually prove the effect of doing branding on marketing and digital marketing in general. Okay. As I said, building a brand is telling a story. It's selling like any other thing. And it's a matter of continuing to tell your story so that nobody questions whether this is actually going to happen or not. Because you're just so convincing and you keep on telling it. Stamina, stamina, stamina. Just keep on telling it. Because if you truly believe in it, other people will believe in it. And then there's this thing about perception is reality. And I think it's so true. And it's so simple, but it's so true. If you make somebody believe in it, it is the reality. Autobottle. We kept on telling the same story of saving money and creating transparency in an industry that wasn't transparent. And in the beginning, nobody believed in it. Like, come on, it doesn't work. And back then it was 10 years ago almost. It didn't really sound right. But eventually, as we talked about it again and again, and we took the chance of going out there on TV and radio and actually talked to people on a different frequency, we were able to tell the same story again and again and again. And that actually turned out to be the only reason why we succeeded, because all of a sudden, when the timing was right, people started to believe in it, and we were growing like crazy. We had close to flat growth in 4 years until we actually started to communicate the story on a higher frequency, and then we started to grow quite significantly. And that's why I say that building a brand is much, much more important than actually getting the core performance indicators right. Because that creates something that is way bigger and way more important on a growth agenda. And that is the reasoning of believing. And you see it in real life as well. You have brand examples, obviously, but also with people. People that tell a story, that have the story right, and obviously the ability to tell the story right. Just get people to follow them. It's obvious, even though it's a fucking crazy idea. This is the most fantastic example. I mean, how can you convince millions and millions of people of something that's so stupid only because somebody standing behind it is so passionately believing in what he's doing? So it's, you can change minds and perception of things if you're just strong enough in believing. And football fans, I mean, how stupid can you be? standing there cold, rainy days, cheering for a team. You have no impact at all. I mean, it's close to impossible to justify the impact. But still, everyone is right. Come to DV, come to DV. And it's like, it's so crazy. But it's because they believe in the thing, right? They want to be part of something. They want to identify with something. And then all of a sudden it becomes a movement, and you can all of a sudden build something that's stronger than just the product. Another example, right? Oh, crazy. Also true, this one, right? So we were so good at telling the story and making people believe in what we were doing that employees got our tattoo. I mean, who would want to have a tattoo of a workshop portal called Autobottle on their arm? Yeah, I wouldn't, but some would. Passion was really what drive. And again, back to the power of a brand and reflecting on what we learned in Autobottler. Because we were able to tell that story, people were starting to write about it. And obviously we had to push and knock on doors again and again and again and again, stamina, but all of a sudden it became a thing. And we were approached by the journalists to write about it. And just some numbers on what can actually come out of building the right brand. Hard to measure, but in a year you can see these are 16, 17 numbers, but nonetheless you can see from the charts. So in the beginning we were paying from all of our traffic. We had to pay, and it was impossible to prove that we could actually grow the business because there was no organic traffic. Then we started to tell the story and get it out there and creating that movement. And all of a sudden, a year after, we weren't really paying for any traffic any longer. And all the organic traffic came in, and the metrics became better, and we could lure investors into the company and kind of create that same thing across 6 or 5 markets. And these are just examples these are actual facts of how a brand can actually impact. It's difficult to say, but these are TV commercials we started doing also in Denmark. And that lifted us up to a new plateau. Every time we were out there telling a story, we came on a new plateau. We created new organic growth, and we started to prove that the power of the brand was much more essential than any other channel that we could ever find. Okay. So one tip that I think I see across quite a few startups is that way too many are thinking about their business from an inside-out perspective. You're thinking about, okay, I have this idea and I think we should do it like this, and we should, we should work on this diamond and work on it for years, and then eventually we'll hit the market and everyone will love it. But you forget to really go out there and talk to people, understand your customers truly. And I don't actually think I've never met a startup that has been really, really, really good at this, because it's really terrifying to go out there and get the honest truth from the people who need to buy your product. But I think it's a common denominator across all successful startups, at least early days, that those who truly are not afraid, are truly out there and talking to their customers from an outside-in perspective, that understand what they really want and what they're asking for, will have a much more significant chance of actually succeeding. So that is really a tip, very operational tip that I think most of you should try to be better at. It's a very, very simple thing, but it's so important. Okay, before I'm closing off, as I said, I stopped in Autobottler 2 years ago. I was actually really convinced that I would never start over again, because it's a tough thing. But then I came up with a new idea, and I felt like starting over. And then I launched Boom. And the reason I guess I'm on stage today is because even though we're only 4 months plus minus in, we already built the brand. And as I showed you also before, Autobottler was built. We built a brand along the way, but I think it was maybe 2-3 years in before we actually built it, before we actually understood it, the story, and we were telling it in the right way. So I took that learning in, and knew that if I should start something new, we had to build the brand or be really clear on our story almost from day one, because that would just ease our path to creating something. And telling the right story is, as I mentioned, very coherent with timing. So you need to be able to find that hook in the market, that meta trend that you can be opposed to or tell something around. That is very important, that you have something to latch on to, so to speak. And in the case of Boon, we could just see that out there in the market, if we're looking across social media platform, it's really a one-way communication. People are posting things, sharing articles, but it's a one-way thing. You might argue, yeah, you can comment and you can actually ask some questions on Instagram, but it's not really interactive. It's a one-way thing. And I think every study actually also underlines that is going to change. So in the future, there will be much more interaction, much more dialogue over monologue. That was one tendency. The other tendency that we were reflecting on in building this business is what's happening in society. And there's this fine difference between being a businessman and being a business. So what we're seeing, and I guess you can all relate to that individuals are becoming their own business to an extent that we haven't even grasped yet. And it's obvious across all kinds of industries. Obviously, the good examples are such as Instagram and influencers all of a sudden becoming empires on their own. But also just looking at the workforce, more and more people are becoming freelance because people are just becoming their own businesses. And that is going to change also quite significantly. Quick fun fact is that the generation before us, they had on average 8 jobs throughout the career. What do you think the generation after us will have? 4? 14? 40, correct. 40. That is quite different, right? So that is fundamentally changing the way we are building businesses going forward. So I wanted to tap into that thing that people are becoming their own business. I wanted to build the technology that would enable the individual to make money. And the other meta trend was obviously that the rise of video content is exploding. And video is by many thought to be the thing that will be a paradigm shift in our way of communication, obviously also due to technology. So video will really be a thing. So what we built with Boon is it's an exclusive live video event. So basically it allows anyone to make money on creating live streams. And that is not a possibility today. So it could be a creator on Instagram, it could even be on LinkedIn, saying that on Thursday I will talk about digital marketing. There is a limited number of seats, only 10, but there will be 100 kroner each. And then people can buy access, and then you can meet up on video and have a true, genuine dialogue. And we could obviously make a cut from that. So it's a quite, I would say, ambitious project in the sense that we're trying to at least go up against some of the big guys out there. And in doing so, we obviously knew that we had to build a brand from day one. And that's also the reason why we were actually part of this PreSeed Academy. And we're super satisfied with what we got out of it. So in 2 weeks, we actually built the brand, the narrative, the why. And as I said, I used to do that in Kunde & Company. It would take half a year and would cost $1 million. It didn't quite do that, but it was really worth it. So this is, more traditionally what you're doing when you're building a brand. So you have a strategy, you find some kind of position in the market, then you make a communication concept, a communication universe, and a marketing plan, etc., etc. In our case, we were really, quite clear on mapping out our competitors and being really, clear on what they were strong at, but obviously also what would be our place in the market. And we could see that there was an obvious position to conquer, which would be this whole thing about being more interactive on digital media and obviously facilitating the individual to build their business. Nobody of the big fish could do that. You cannot limit your number of seats on any social media today. And we could also, again, in telling the right story, we could be really clear on saying what we are not. And again, being opposed to the industry. Exactly the same thing as Autobody. We were always and constantly saying we are everything the industry is not. That's a strong fundament to actually tell a story. So we could list, as a, in the Boon case, we could list what the other ones are, and obviously where we think the future is heading, and then be synonymous with that. And in our story, it was actually took 2 weeks or so to nail it, but all of a sudden it was like, okay, there it is. That's our story. And it was like a goosebump moment. Like, this is what we're gonna tell, because it's so clear, it's so distinct, it's so easy, everybody gets it. Let's go. So this is so me, social media. Everybody know the term. It's so me, and you get it. It's become a noun. But we could be almost the same, but just with this tiny little difference. I guess you get it. There's a big but very impactful and significant difference in so me and being so me. On being you, being genuine, being your own business, and being everything social media is basically not. And then we had the story. Then we were able to communicate it. It's simple, everybody understands it, and it will position ourselves in a very distinct way to anyone we're talking to, even investors. And all of a sudden you have something to tell investors that they see immediately, they see the potential, and all of a sudden the tables are more or less turning from you trying to raise money, and now all of a sudden they would ask you to please take on their money because they see this as crystal clear as you do, because you've been able to tell that story so crystal clear. So this is a small difference, but such a clear story. And the thing about this, which I think is important in defining your own story, is that it doesn't limit us to do any specific things. Obviously, we're still a very young company. We will need to try and test different things, and we probably also need to pivot a time or two. But this meta story just enables whatever pivot we will do, because it's fairly broad, but still it's strong because it's opposed to something else. And Kiki also showed the examples. We got some fantastic visual identity as well, and then all of a sudden it looks like our company is, hopefully at least, way younger and more experienced than it is. And then, to end off where I started, I think the most important thing in these days is not to tell your story yourself. You need to make other people tell your story. And this is more true than ever. And if you're looking across all, the bigger tech companies that have actually succeeded, whether it's Airbnb, Spotify, Just Eat, Vivino, I can continue. They've all been able to make other people share it, right? Because they feel it's their own, and they've created a brand and obviously also a product where it's heavily relying on reviews, because people don't trust in companies, they trust in other people, in other consumers. Way more impactful to make other people tell your story. So that's also why we're trying to build up our brand on letting other people tell why our product is fantastic. And this is just a short example of that. No sound, great. But what this guy is basically saying, so he's an influencer on primarily Instagram. He has 1 million followers, and he's all of a sudden making $20,000 using Boon. And we're actually not asking him to tell the story, but he's just telling the story of Boon quite significantly and fantastic. And all of a sudden, when he's doing that, it's 10 times stronger than ourselves telling a story. So that's why testimonials is so super strong. Yeah. He's just a great guy, and it really made a huge difference for us. even better. No, it's fine. I think you get the point. Last slide is just to say you cannot obviously build a brand without being really detailed on all the other things. I just wanted to say that in doing our marketing plan and our plan going forward, obviously we are very, very, very detailed on everything we can be detailed on, but also aware of of the importance of one cannot go without the other. You cannot go out there and just tell a fantastic story and hope the whole world will be saved, but you cannot also just use traditional marketing channels and hope that you will grow significantly. So you have to have that balance between obviously attracting people on a meta level and then being able to convert them. It goes without saying. Those were the words. Thank you.